Yeah, these chargers aren't really good for travel necessarily. If you end up needing one of them with a Bolt EV, something went terribly wrong with your trip. Hey guys, so you might be asking, what the heck am I doing out in the boonies? I'm here in the Inland Empire, and I decided to charge up to 100% battery. I wanted to do a video about driving to Las Vegas, and the reason for it is some of you might not remember this from 2012, but there was a video where Elon Musk lent out his personal Tesla Model S, and a crew from Wide Open Throttle attempted to drive from Los Angeles, air quotes, to Las Vegas on a single battery charge, just to sort of prove that it could be done. And technically, they weren't leaving from Los Angeles; they were leaving from where I'm at right now, in the Inland Empire, uh, Rancho Cucamonga-ish area. And just to give you an overview of what that trip was like, they only ended up going about 212 miles. So it's all freeway. There were no superchargers at the time, but they ended up traveling about 55 miles an hour, sometimes less than that on the freeway to make it. Turned off the air conditioner, and I wanted to sort of do this do this trip Bolt EV style, and just show you guys, because I'm getting a lot of questions about whether people can travel from Los Angeles to Las Vegas in the Bolt EV, and some of them are waiting on the Baker charger to be done, because when that goes in, then they'll be able to. But the truth of the matter is, you've been able to for a year. You actually don't need chargers between here and Las Vegas to get there. And now in that video with the Tesla, they sort of sacrificed some things in terms of both speed and in terms of comfort, because they didn't have the air conditioning on. It's about 85, 90 degrees right now, so I'm going to go ahead and get ready to get going. All right, so right from the onset, the first thing I want to get out of the way is I'm not a real big fan of gimmicks or sales tricks, and I think what Tesla did using Wide Open Throttle about 6 years ago, it kind of was a gimmick. And I had mentioned earlier that Inland Empire isn't really Los Angeles, and from the perspective of an electric vehicle owner, the big issue is that Rancho Cucamonga, where this is, or Fontana, depending on exactly where you start, it's actually at about 1,200 feet elevation, and that's significant because it means that your overall net elevation increase for this trip isn't very high. If you were coming from Los Angeles, it would actually be an additional 1,000 feet of elevation in addition to whatever extra mileage you had to drive. Now, going up Cajon Pass, I found this pass to be a bit of a pussycat. Now, they were a little bit intimidated by it, but I've driven it enough to know that the Bolt EV just loves hills for whatever reason, and it's something that I think I forgot to mention throughout this video when I was filming it is I'm not running on the stock Bolt EV rims. Now, the rims that I'm running on are the Cruise Eco rims, and they're about 5 pounds lighter than the Bolt EV's stock rims, and that could play a significant role in efficiency if you're going up hills, but and it would help with acceleration. But because most of this is just sustained freeway driving, there shouldn't be a significant difference at all in the efficiency. And you'll notice that other than just that initial traffic getting onto the freeway, and there's a slowdown for road construction at Barstow, I pretty much just kept it pegged at 70 miles an hour. And part of the reason I did that is because I'm still finding myself having to correct people and just sort of state my case that in my experience so far, the Bolt EV is every bit as efficient at freeway speeds as my first generation Bolt, which is a highly efficient vehicle on the freeway, right? It's very aerodynamic, and the Bolt EV seems to be able to match it just fine, at least up to about 70 to 75 miles an hour. And the other thing that you're going to notice on this trip, and if you reference back to the wide open throttle trip, a lot of it they spent going much slower than the posted speed limit. Well, I'm going the posted speed limit, and other than a few camper trailers and RVs and semis, I'm usually getting passed. And the people who are passing me, they're passing me in excess of 15 to 20 miles an hour. It's really not unusual to see some people on this freeway doing nearly 100. And, you know, I feel like if you're in your space first, you're not really a safety hazard, but it is something important that when you're passing slower vehicles, you do have to keep your eye on the rear view mirror, because the posted speed limit just isn't fast enough, unfortunately. You're doing 70 miles an hour, and the people out on the road with you are doing 80, 90, and 100 miles an hour. And then one more thing that I'm about to touch on here as we head in toward Baker is, because that's people's preference for how they're going to drive, I think that's the big driver for these charging networks and charging infrastructure. If everybody drove 55 miles an hour, you could leave Los Angeles with a full charge on the Bolt EV and pretty much make it to Las Vegas without much issue. So the big concern here is the speed of the freeway, and then of course these aren't ideal conditions, but they're not that far off. So mid 80s to 90s, some shifting winds, but maybe at most 5 to 10 mile an hour winds. These are about the best circumstances you could expect on your trip into Vegas. So and even then I've had much worse circumstances. So overall, this efficiency coming into Baker from essentially Rancho Cucamonga, it's pretty high, even though I was doing 70 miles an hour the whole way. But there was about a net 200 to 300 feet elevation drop, and again, the conditions weren't bad. So your mileage may vary, so I wouldn't necessarily count on getting this high of efficiency coming into Baker, but it'll be close. The Bolt EV tends to be fairly consistent. All right, well, we're in Baker, California right now. Just made a quick pit stop here. And if you remember from some of my other videos, I noted that it takes more energy to get here from Victorville than it does to go from here back to Victorville. So, and more than it takes to go from here to Vegas. So we're actually past the halfway point, and we've only used about half the battery. So that's pretty cool. All right, so here we are in Baker. The trip was pretty uneventful up to this point, and much like the S85 that they drove out, we're a little bit over, or right at about half battery right now, about 50% battery. So I'm feeling fairly confident in our ability to make it in, especially since our starting point was very, very similar. And it does sort of beg the question then, if this EV Go Baker station is going in, or do Bolt EV drivers actually need it? And I would say yes. And there's a really important thing that this allows. right now the weather is fairly ideal. It's 80 to 90, and there's some wind, sometimes crosswind, sometimes like a cross tailwind. So it's not completely hurtful, but it's not that helpful either. But it's really just me in the car, no heavy load, uh, no bad weather, no excessive climate control. So with this, I'm going to be able to make it to Vegas. I'm pretty confident of that in a single battery charge. But I didn't start from Los Angeles proper. And like I said, it's just me, no weight, no cargo. So if you're going to make it from someplace like where I come from in Ventura or from Los Angeles, you're going to need to start with a much higher battery capacity, and then you'll be able to make it here, but you wouldn't be able to make it all the way to Vegas, and that's the concern. But what this does allow, this EV Go station, and it's partially because the Bolt EV charges faster than 50 kilowatts, and it's partially for things like the Jaguar I-Pace that's coming out, but it's going to allow those two vehicles to drive to Las Vegas in the same amount of time that someone would normally drive in an internal combustion engine vehicle, regardless of circumstances. And that's very important because that means that gap is bridged at this point. And yes, there's fewer of these than there are. I showcased the Baker Charger, supercharger that's just down the street. They have 40 stalls, but between this and if you read the California Energy Commission plans, there are about a dozen more 50 kilowatt and above DC fast chargers that are going in along this route. So given that you're only going to need to be here for about 15 to 20 minutes to top up enough to get into Vegas, I actually don't foresee there being that much of a glut. Now, eventually, yes, if we have a huge, massive adoption of electric vehicles, you're going to need to have larger stations capable of handling the surge. But look at the Tesla supercharger right now. Even with the number of cars that they're selling, the number of cars that they sell in Southern California, there were 2 cars in the stalls over there, and that seems to be about the average. After Kettleman City, after it sort of settled down, that charger, I rarely saw more than a couple vehicles there at any time. This Baker charger, I see on average about 2 to 3 Teslas in that supercharger. And again, this is a high population of these electric vehicles. They have chargers in Yermo now. They still have their chargers in Barstow. And because of that, they really have overbuilt their network, in my opinion. This EV Go site here, it's going to allow for, I'd say, hundreds of electric vehicles a week to make this trip into Las Vegas from Los Angeles. And that's just this station alone. And there are a dozen more that are going to go in. Maybe not 6 chargers, or in this case right now, 4 chargers per location, but 2, and that's enough, right, when you have that many of them. So I think it's an important addition, and I think it's an important consideration that a car like the Bolt EV, a car like the Jaguar I-Pace will be able to now drive from Orange County, Santa Monica, Ventura, in the same amount of time as it would take the owner to drive in an internal combustion engine vehicle. That's a powerful thing. So I'm getting excited, even though EVgo seems to be taking forever to get the station online. But I'm not going to delay too much longer. I think it's time to head into Vegas, and I might just keep going the posted speed limit. I'm not sure. I have one more big hill to mount, and I think that's about it. So, all right, guys, one more leg. Okay, so one other thing that I had mentioned here in Baker is that I felt like Tesla has already sort of overbuilt their supercharger network. And the other reason for that is their cars now are starting to increase in range. And the Model 3 is a perfect example of it. You know, you could say, oh, well, they're going to sell about 500,000 of the Model 3s, and a lot of them are going to be in Southern California, and the people who buy them are the types of people who like to drive out to Vegas. Well, I can get behind all of those arguments, but the Model 3 is fairly efficient, and it does have about a 300-mile range. So it's a bit more it's got a bit more energy than the Bolt EV, and it's a bit more efficient at these speeds. So, you know, if the Bolt EV can make this trip from the Inland Empire without charging all the way into Vegas, I'm not sure that a Model 3 with a long range battery pack even needs to stop at all, coming from even parts of western Los Angeles heading into Las Vegas. Now, again, it does get back to conditions, and it gets back to your driving style. But even if you're one of those people who pegs it at 80 miles an hour, uh, unless there's some adverse conditions, you'll make it just fine. Now, the other thing to note about Baker here is that it is in a basin, so you're basically going uphill either direction that you decide to drive. So here, entering into Nevada, you know, I did have to crest over another fairly large hill, and actually, in some ways, it was more significant than Cajon Pass. But again, it just didn't seem to matter all that much. And you know, as you're coasting down, the efficiency starts to creep back up again. So you see me here, I'm getting ready to pass through Prim, and I'm still averaging over 4 miles per kilowatt hour. So again, these high freeway speeds, I'm just not dealing with any major inefficiencies. And again, this is partially because you can see from the odometer, I have nearly 50,000 miles on my Bolt EV. I've tracked a lot of miles in it. I know its efficiencies very well. I drive it on the freeway a lot for long distance trips. So, you know, I don't want to go so far as to call myself an expert, but I do feel like I'm more familiar than most with its capabilities. And, you know, part of the reason I do this channel, part of the reason I do what I do is I feel like there's a lot of misinformation, there's a lot of tribalism going on in the EV communities, and I think it's important to have some real world, unbiased data points. And you know, this is why I want to branch out a little bit more, reaching out to different companies to see if I'll be able to maybe test some of their vehicles, you know, almost like a press release, if they would lend it out for a few days here or there, just so, you know, I could do a full review of them and show them in real world circumstances. Well, we made it into Vegas with actually a decent amount of energy to spare. The meter isn't reading as high, you know, on the Tesla run. I think they said they had 64, 65 miles of range left. We're not quite that high, but I mean, decent enough. And I know we're technically not in the strip right now, but part of the reason I did that, that I didn't wait to go all the way to the strip, is one, I don't know how much time I'm going to be spending there. So I wanted to charge first at a fast charger, because I might end up uh, trying to use level two while I'm just sort of walking the strip and hanging out for a while. And I don't want to tie up a level two much longer than I have to. What's interesting though, and I've never really seen this before, this is one of the delivery trucks that looks like it's a pure electric, or I guess maybe it could be hybrid electric, but I don't think so. Not with a Chatamo. It's a Fuso. It's made by Mitsubishi. So their battery is relatively low right now. I might hook up, or I might end up just going to another charger. but I wanted to plan it out, and actually I might end up going to a 50 kilowatt charger instead. They're fairly rare, but yeah, like I said, the reason I did this is most of these chargers in Vegas are only one stall, and so I figured I'd hit the first one into town and then go from there. So anyway, but that's pretty cool. And yeah, just judging by the battery usage over there, it's going to be a while before they're done. Um, they're 27%. So all right, yeah, I'll find another charger and go there. Well, I figured I would test out the green lots here at the Tiki Lounge, and it doesn't actually open. But either way, this doesn't look like it accepts credit card either. So I'll see if I can put the green lots app in and see what I need to do with that. All right. Well, that was pretty cool. The door just popped open on its own. So it's this one is a flat rate to use the charger, but it looks like it's going now. Um, I was under the assumption that this was a full 50 kilowatt charger, so we'll see. But right now doesn't really look like it. Okay, and here's the obligatory cruising the strip video to sort of close out. Like I said, for me there weren't a whole lot of real surprises. I knew what the Bolt EV was capable of. I knew this trip was, not necessarily easy, but it's fully within the Bolt EV's capabilities. And I did really want to call out what the actual purpose of the Baker charger is. It's just to make sure that people don't actually have to concede anything driving out to Baker. Like I said, it's pretty much as fast and as convenient as it would be in an internal combustion vehicle. So there's really no excuse from that front. But I wanted to thank you all for watching. It was a fun trip. I'm glad I got to do it, and I'm glad I got to share it with you. If you like these videos, if you find them helpful, please like and subscribe. It helps me out a lot, helps the channel out a lot. And thank you again, and I'll see you on the road.